Starting, all right, so this timeline, this condensed timeline begins roughly when?
Around 6 p.m.
All right, on what day?
June 7th, 2021.
All right, and let's start at 6:04, and I want to move through this expeditiously, and we'll stop and talk about some specific entries as we go through, okay?
Okay.
All right, and so starting there at 6:04, does Paul Murdaugh have any phone activity?
He does. He calls Will Loving. And as you can see in the parentheses, it's going to say PM extraction. That means it was pulled off of Paul Murdaugh's phone extraction, just for reference.
All right, and Will Loving, that's the individual that testified weeks ago.
That is correct.
And 6:08, what activity was seen on Paul's phone?
He makes an outgoing call to Dad, which is identified as Alex Murdaugh. It shows answered, but 1 second long.
All right, and what was the source of that information?
That was from Paul Murdaugh's phone extraction. It does not show up in Alex Murdaugh's original logical dump or the second one from Britt Dove, but it does show up on his CDRs from Verizon. So that'd be the records that Verizon actually keeps for the phone.
All right, and can a user of a phone affect the CDRs that are with the Verizon phone company?
They cannot, no.
So can the user affect what data remains on their phone?
Yes.
And frequently throughout this timeline, do we see instances in which there was a call logged on on Alec Murdaugh's CDRs, but was missing from his phone from the extraction?
That is correct.
Don't leave the witness.
All right. Can you explain any difference between the CDRs as it relates to Alec Murdaugh's phone and whether or not there's any missing call logs on the extraction from his phone?
As we go through this extraction, you're going to see that multiple instances we're going to have calls showing on Alex Murdaugh's CDRs that we could not find on the logical extraction or the Britt Dove full extraction of Alex's phone, and that's going to be notated on the bottom if it was not in the extraction.
All right. 6:09:48. Do we have any communications on Maggie's phone?
This is going to be a iMessage from Maggie Murdaugh to Paul Murdaugh stating, "You okay getting little foot massage? Then I'm heading home." And that was obtained from Maggie Murdaugh and Paul Murdaugh's phone extractions.
At 6:10:01, going to the bottom of this page, that being page number 2, is there another message from Maggie to Paul Murdaugh?
This is also going to be iMessage to Paul stating, "Love you and Blanca cooked you dinner."
Moving on to page 3. And what does this reflect right here?
This is going to be from FBI agent Matt Wild. This is going to be from his report. This is for Paul Murdaugh. You're going to identify that in the right-hand corner where it says Paul. Just for reference, anytime you see a map, if you look on the right-hand corner, it's going to tell you whose map that is for.
All right. And just generally remind the jury what this map reflects, please.
This is just showing generally where the cell towers are located and where the area, whenever like a phone call or text message, where it was pinging during that time for Paul.
And these little red things right here with the angles on it, what do those reflect?
That's going to be where the cell tower is and what angle the call would have originated or take place from.
All right. And down at the bottom, what's the first time recorded for Paul's cell phone as it pings on these cell towers?
It's going to be 6:17:42.
And can you describe to the jury generally where these cell towers reflect Paul's phone is moving?
So it'd be at the Beaufort area down the right-hand side, moving up towards Moselle, which you can see in the far right corner, that little badge-looking red dot.
All right. Up here at the top center, what is that right there?
That's going to be an arc. It's just a distance arc.
But the red dot, what is that?
The red dot, that's going to be 4147 Moselle Road.
All right. And what times does Paul's phone ping off any cell tower near Moselle?
6:53 p.m., 7:05, and 7:30:05.
All right, and we see a 3 right there. Does that refer, or what does that 3 refer to as it relates to that cell tower location near Moselle?
It's just going to show you what side of the cell tower it's on, what arc.
And what time does it first ping on Sector 1 facing Moselle?
7:05:33 p.m.
All right, moving to continue on page 3. We have a time reference at 6:20:53. Can you explain to the jury what, if anything, that indicates?
We have Maggie Murdaugh. She received a phone call from Proctor Marion. That's how it showed up in her phone. Through the phone number, it's actually Marion Proctor. That's just how it relays in the phone. It shows rejected.
All right. And after that, what, if any, communications were there?
Right after that, at 6:21:28, Maggie Murdaugh sends a text message to Marion stating, "Can't talk, getting food massage, we'll call you back." That was from her phone extraction.
Moving on to 6:23, are there any communications with Maggie and Paul?
There are. Paul sends a message to his mom at 6:23:27 stating, "What did she make?" And then Maggie replies back shortly after saying, "Country fried steak and mac and cheese."
Below that, we have a orange and blue box. What does that represent?
So this is going to be from the FBI telemetry data from that Excel spreadsheet that's already into evidence. And this is just showing with that color coordination I talked about earlier. The orange is going to show a system startup. And from previous testimony, that could be, unlocking a car, locking it, getting in close range with the key fob, opening up the rear hatch. Just something that makes, when you get in your car, you kind of hear that noise before you start it up, the telemetry. It's just inner workings. Anything could really cause it.
Well, I'm asking you, going back to that map, the incident location at Moselle where Paul and Maggie were found murdered, what county is that in?
That's going to be Colleton County. And then if you look, we have the pink, which is going to kind of show propulsion, and then blue, which is going to show some kind of shift in the vehicle transmission.
All right, down to the bottom, 624, what is that?
624.2, that shows from the FBI report, telemetry report, that the Suburban shows a device connection.
That would be Alec Murdaugh's phone?
That'd be correct.
Moving on to 6:24 p.m. Is there any data points as it relates to the defendant's Suburban?
It is. We have one at 6:24:18 around the PMPED law firm.
All right, and what time is that? No, 6:24?
6:24:18, correct.
All right, and that map there, is that a data point from the CAST data that you just explained to the jury?
That is correct.
All right. Moving down, we have some various messages from some of the individuals. Is that right?
We do.
Okay.
We have Alex Murdaugh receiving a phone call from Jay Parker at 6:25. 6:27, Paul is sending a message to Britt saying maybe Saturday. He calls Robert Boyle shortly after, and then at 8:38 p.m., Rogan calls Marion Dempsey.
And to your recollection, what is Marion Dempsey to Rogan at this period of time?
I believe it's a girlfriend currently at the time.
All right, moving on to page 5. What does this map represent? Who is this from, this map?
This is going to be from Matt Wild from the FBI. This is directly from his report.
And what phone does this map reflect?
Top right, it's going to say Alex Murdaugh with associated cell phone.
All right, and then there's a box below that. Explain to the jury again what that box represents.
So the box below that, that's going to represent all the times that the pings were logged that Matt Wild actually put in the report.
And then the black circle with the angle in the middle, what is that?
That's going to show you the cell tower and then the kind of angle that the calls or texts would have been in.
And what property is in the sector of that cell tower?
4147 Moselle Road. And it's identified by that red badge-looking dot.
All right. On here, this box with the times, those are times of what again?
This would have been times of activity that would send to a cell tower that they would have data on. In the 6 o'clock hour, what is the latest time period that you see Alec Murdaugh's phone reflecting activity? 6:52 p.m. And then after that, what's the next time period that you've seen reflecting activity? The next time showing on the map is going to be 9:04:24 p.m. Does the defendant's cell phone reflect any activity between 6:52 and 9:04? Between 6:52 and 9:04, there's no activity reflected. At least on the cell pinging. That is correct. All right, at 6:40:01, what activity, if any, is reflected? Paul calls, it's going to show up as PA in the extraction, which is Alex Murdaugh based on the phone number. It shows it was answered. It was 2 minutes and 29 seconds long. This call also does not show up in the phone extractions for Alex Murdaugh, just on his CDRs.
it was in the defendant's CDRs?
That is correct.
All right.
And it was also in Paul's phone. It shows the phone call.
642, and what if anything's reflected?
We have a suburban device connection to iPhone from the FBI report at 6:42:48, and at 6:42:54, we show the suburban arrives at 4147 Moselle Road based on the GM OnStar data.
All right, and going on to page 6, is that the your CAS map reflecting that data point you just described?
That is correct. It's going to be the 6:42:54 data point.
And what happens at that moment?
That's when Alex Murdaugh is going to arrive back from the PUP and PMPED law firm from work that day.
All right, moving on. 6:43:50. What, if any, activity do you see?
It shows that Maggie Murdaugh's phone had a missed call from PA, which is Alex Murdaugh. It shows missed, but also it shows up in Alex Murdaugh's CDRs, but does not show up in either one of the phone extractions.
All right, and moving on, we have a couple of the orange and white boxes. Tell the jury again what those reflect.
So these are just going to reflect some kind of system boot up. Doesn't mean the car moved or did anything. It just means that door was opened. It just something triggered the car to kind of do a little internal boot up from previous testimony.
At 6:53:44, what, if any, activity do you see?
Paul Murdaugh calls John Marvin. It shows 1 minute and 42 seconds long, and that's based off of Paul's phone extraction.
So your understanding, when you see those times of the call lengths, does that also include connection time as well?
It does. Based on previous testimony from Verizon, that could include how long it takes to get the actual network connected.
All right. And then at the 7 o'clock hour, what, if any, communications are on Paul's phone?
So Paul sends a text message to Claude C.B. Rowe saying, "Are you coming tomorrow?" And then shortly after, he sends another text saying, "Sunflowers died. We need to plow them under ASAP." And that was based off his phone extraction.
Moving on now to page 7. Do we have some activity at 7:02:29?
We do. Maggie Murdaugh calls Alex Murdaugh. It shows 2 seconds, and this also does not show on Alex Murdaugh's extraction. It shows on the CDRs, and it also shows on Maggie's phone that Maggie called Alex, but does not show on Alex's phone that call was there.
Missing from his phone, though, correct?
That is correct.
All right.
Missing in the call log of the phone.
All right, 7:03 to 7:11. What, if anything, is reflected on Alex's phone?
His phone's showing approximately 165 steps taken during that time frame.
And then what happens at 7:04?
7:04, through the catch data database, it shows that Paul Murdaugh is at the residence of 4147 Moselle Road.
Does Maggie's phone reflect any activity as we move on to the 7:04 time period?
Her phone showed that between 7:04 and 8:17, her phone showed a Bluetooth connection to MBUX 95224, which is her Mercedes-Benz.
And so anytime we see MBUX 95224, what, if anything, does that represent?
That's going to reflect her Mercedes-Benz.
MB for Mercedes-Benz?
That is correct.
All right. Moving on, at 7:05, does Maggie call anyone?
She does. She calls Marion at 7:05:13. It shows answered 7 seconds.
At 7:05:55, is there any reflection of the communication between Alec and Maggie Murdaugh?
There is. Alex sends a message to, in his phone, it's Maggie May, stating, "Paul said you were getting a petty. Call when you done." That's from the Alex. That's from the extraction.
Moving on, do we have any communications between Maggie and Paul during this time period?
At 7:05:32, we have Maggie calling Paul. It shows answered 1 minute and 31 seconds.
And then does Maggie attempt to call Marion again?
That's correct.
And I'm sorry, that would be at the bottom of the screen.
Yep, that'd be the 7:07:49. Maggie Murdaugh calls Marion. And when it says Marion, it's Marion Proctor.
All right, moving on to page 8, we have another map. Can you generally explain what this represents to the jury, please?
So in the top right-hand corner, we have Maggie Murdaugh with the associated phone number. We have 2 points, 4147 Moselle Road in the red, and the green's going to be the Almeda property. When you're looking at this map, number 1's going to be closer to Charleston, and it's working its way. Maggie is working her way towards Moselle in this map.
All right, and the first time period you see on dot number that's numbered 1?
It's going to be 7:07:49
And
p.m.
the latest time period you see on the dot that's numbered 5?
That is correct. That's going to be in the Walterboro area. It's going to be 7:50:20. 7:50:20 is going to be the latest dot, and that's in the Walterboro area.
All right, moving on, looking down at 7:09:43, what, if any, activity do we see on Maggie's phone?
Maggie calls her mom. It shows answered 8 minutes and 17 seconds long.
Would that be Ms. Brandstetter?
That is correct.
We have an orange box. Tell the jury that quickly, please.
So that's just showing a system boot up. Could have been getting close to the Suburban, unlocking it, locking it, opening up a door, or it could just be some kind of internal components based on previous testimony from the FBI.
After that, we have 2 entries. Can you tell the jury what those 2 entries are, the time periods, and what they represent, please?
Yep. So the next 2 entries are going to be 7:14:13 to 7:22:19. It's going to be Paul Murdaugh's iPhone showing approximately 208 steps traveled during that time period. And the one below it's going to be 7:15:35 to 7:21:52. This is going to be from Alex's phone, showing that approximately 200 steps were taken during that time frame. So we have 208 steps taken from Paul during his time frame, and then Alex is around 200 steps traveled.
And both those time periods for those steps for Alec and Paul, are those generally roughly the same?
Generally the same.
Consistent?
That's correct.
7:18:44, what, if any, activity do you see?
Alex Murdaugh sends a text message to CB Rowe saying, "Call me, please."
Going now to page 9. At the top, those 2 entries, again, explain those 2 entries to the jury.
So the first entry is going to be Paul Murdaugh's iPhone from 7:25:03 to 7:34:47, and it's showing 139 steps taken during that time period. It's an approximate. 7:28:35 to 7:37:11 is going to be Alex Murdaugh's iPhone, showing approximately 47 steps traveled during that time period.
All right, 7:30 p.m., we have another data point indicating Maggie's trip home to Moselle.
That is correct.
All right, we got another map. Tell the jury what this one is, please.
This map's just showing that her phone was pinging. It's starting at 7:30.
Whose phone is this?
This is going to be Paul. I'm sorry, Paul Murdaugh. It's going to be the right-hand corner. It's going to say Paul Murdaugh with the phone number on top. This is just showing where his phone was pinging on June 7, 2021, starting at 7:30, and then all the way to 8:40 p.m.
All right, we see 2 cell towers there and then some arcs. Where do those arcs intersect?
The arcs intersect close to the property at Moselle Road.
And if you would, just tell the jury the earliest time that's reflected here and the latest time that's reflected here.
The earliest time reflected is going to be 7:30:05, and the latest time reflected is going to be 7:40:21 p.m. on June 7, 2021.
So Paul's phone is at the Moselle location according to this data.
That is correct.
All right. Bottom of page 9. Do we have any communications between Maggie and Marion Proctor?
We do. At 7:31:13 p.m., we show a call from Maggie to Marion at 7:39, which is the length of the call.
7 minutes and 39 seconds.
That's correct.
Does that include connection time as well?
It does.
Do we have any step data on Paul's phone in the time period around this time?
Paul's phone shows between 7:35:10 and 7:41:43. It shows roughly around 171 steps traveled during that time frame.
7:37 and 7:38. Do we see any activity on Paul's phone with some of his friends?
Yeah, Paul receives a Snapchat message from Michelle Beck stating, BC, I have short-term memory loss, and that was based off his phone extraction. And then Paul Murdaugh receives an iMessage from Megan Kimbrell stating Paul.
All right, moving now to page 10. Going to 739.55. Can you tell the jury what that data point reflects on your summary timeline?
So from earlier testimony, you've seen this this video. This is just a thumbnail picture, and this is when it's shown it was created in Paul Murdaugh's phone. And we have a little screenshot of the creation time. It's going to show 7:39:55 is when this thumbnail was created in Paul's phone.
And remind the jury what video that is. Let's say we got a thumbnail there, but
Yep.
what video is that?
This is going to be that Snapchat video that was sent to a few friends of the tree. You have Alex Murdaugh on the tree that's leaning over.
All right. And again, this is when that video, at least the timestamp, was its creation?
That's correct, based on previous testimony, yes.
All right. 7:41 to 7:48. What, if anything, is reflected on Alex's phone?
We show that 29 steps were traveled on his phone, approximately between 7:41 and 7:48.
All right. And just talked about the Snapchat video. Looking at this map, whose phone is this? And explain these data points to the jury, if you would, please. Or whose phone is this first, if you would, please?
So this is going to be Paul Murdaugh's iPhone, and below it, it's going to be his iPhone location data. So this is not going to be Verizon location. This is going to be location data directly off of his phone.
So this is GPS data that's more specific?
That is correct.
All right. And we see a number of dots up here. What is this area up here generally sort of in the center of this image?
That's going to be the kennel area, and then there's that little house.
The cabin?
The cabin.
All right. And what time periods in that upper box do we see GPS data on Paul's phone up there in the kennel cabin area?
We're seeing between 7:45 and 7:54 is location data for that
Is
area.
that 7:54 or 7:56?
7:56, sorry, it's hard to see.
All right. And then we have two data points at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Is that where is generally that on the property?
That's going to be what previous testimony talked about, like a dove field.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be past the main house, closer to the Godley Farm roadside, and that's going to be a data point at 8 and 42 seconds and 8 and 44 seconds.
8 p.m.?
That's correct, 8 p.m., June 7th.
Oh, darn it. And then down at the bottom of page 10, is there any step data on Paul's phone?
There is. It shows approximately 89 steps traveled
From
during
what time periods?
7:45 p.m. to 7:55.
Moving on to page 11, we have a map. Tell the jury whose phone that is and what that data point is, please.
So this is going to be Maggie Murdaugh's phone. This is going to be Verizon location data. And what we see here is the tower and then the arc of the tower. This is going to be in the Walterboro area. The time is 7:50:03 p.m.
All right, and moving now, we're starting to see some references, and there's a little battery symbol on the side. What does that represent?
So that's going to represent battery life. So right here, this is going to be at 7:52:28. It's going to show Paul Murdaugh's iPhone battery at 7%.
And in your review generally of Paul's cell phone data, was it generally consistent for him to continue to use his phone even if he had a low battery life on it?
That's correct.
Right. And is that also consistent with the testimony from David Grubbs from yesterday or the day before?
Previous testimony, yes.
All right, below that, 7:55 time period, we have two entries. Can you explain those two entries to the jury and how they relate to each other, if anything?
So 7:55:44 to 8:05:28, we have Paul Murdaugh's iPhone showing approximately 262 steps traveled, and a close time frame from 7:55:32 to 8:05:07, we show Alex's iPhone traveling approximately 270 steps during that time period.
And then at 7:56, what is reflected as it relates to that Snapchat video?
This is when the Snapchat video referencing Alex Murdaugh would have been sent through Paul's Snapchat account to his friends, based on previous testimony.
And it was created, you already testified to this, but it was created when?
I believe 7:39:55.
And it was sent out to his friends when?
At 7:56 p.m.
Moving on to page 12 at 7:57, does one of his friends respond?
Yes, he receives a Snapchat message from Brian Murdaugh
Oops, sorry.
stating, "Damn, man, needs some straps. Oh, it."
All right. Now we're moving into the 8 p.m. hour on June 7th, 2021. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. We have a map here. First of all, in the right corner, whose phone is this?
This is going to be Paul Murdaugh's phone. This is going to be his iPhone location data.
And starting up at the, it's sort of the top center, more to the right. Where does that location generally?
That's going to be the little cabin on the property.
All right. And what is the data point? What's the time on that data point up there?
I believe it says 8:06:20 p.m.
All right. And then we see the dots sort of moving down. And in what direction are they generally moving?
That's moving towards the main house on the property.
All right. And then down at the bottom of the screen, at what time do we see that data point stop at the main residence?
8:14.
What's the first data point?
8:08:45 and then 8:14.
Paul's at the main
PM.
residence at what time? First?
8:08:45 p.m.
All right. And just on page 13, we have some earlier data points. Is this map kind of out of order just a little bit?
It is. So this is just going to be earlier data points at 8:05:14 and 8:04:45, just showing some location data from his iPhone.
All right. So that one should have gone before this one, the one at the bottom of page 12,
That is correct.
which reflects Paul again getting back to the main residence at what time?
8:08:45 p.m.
Looking below, again on page 13, do we see two entries for Paul and Alex's phone? And if so, please explain to the jury what they are.
So for Alex's phone, we show between 8:05 and 8:09 that his phone approximately took 54 steps traveled during that time period. And then for Paul, we show 8:05:46 to 8:15:24. We show approximately 303 steps traveled during that time period.
Moving on to page 14, do we see that same map again of Paul's phone reflecting him arriving at the residence at 8:08?
8:08:45, correct.
And then still pinging there at what time, at the bottom time?
8:14 p.m.
Again, at 8:07, what, if anything, do we see?
At 8:07:20, we see that Paul is sending Snapchats to a few friends. That's based off his Snapchat records.
All right, the next entry is in purple, and then there's kind of a line going from that. Explain what that purple reference, that time period references, and then the line that travels down the side of your timeline. Explain to the jury what that's going to represent generally to the various phones as we go forward.
As we go forward, anytime you see in purple, that's going to represent Maggie Murdaugh's phone. And for this instant, it's going to represent on the left-hand side, the line going down. Anytime you see a line next to something, that means whatever it says on the left. So if it says device locked, it means the device was locked during those other time periods. So this is going to show from 8:11:08 to 8:31:15 that Maggie's iPhone was locked. And as we move down, you can see it continue to the next page. That means during those times it's locked.
All right, so we'll see multiple of those as you go forward, just explaining time periods where various devices were locked or other things were going on.
That is correct.
All right. Moving on to page 15, we have a map. Explain to the jury whose phone this is and what it represents.
So this is going to be for CB Row, and this is a overview map. You can see Augusta, North Augusta area, and it's showing the sector and the tower that it's pinging off of at 7:13:15 in the North Augusta area.
You say 7:13 or 8:13?
I'm sorry, 8:13:15.
All right. So CB Row's phone is pinging over here, way over here in Augusta. Is that right?
That is correct.
All right, moving to the next map. Whose phone is this? If you could tell whose phone this is, and then what data points you see on this particular map.
So this is going to be Paul Murdaugh's iPhone location data, so it's going to be separate from like Verizon location data. And this is showing at the area of the main house, bottom left, and the data starts at 8:14 and goes all the way to 8:35:07.
8:35. Paul's phone is located where?
At the main house, 4147 Moselle Road.
And down at the bottom of page 15, do we have any step reference for Paul?
We do from 8:15:55 to 8:21:45. We're showing approximately 140 steps traveled.
Paul arrived back at the residence about 8:08, you testified, is that correct?
That is correct.
At 8:17 and 14 seconds, what, if anything, do you see on Maggie's phone?
So it's highlighted purple in reference to Maggie. It's going to show that her phone ended at the connection to the Mercedes-Benz, which is the MBUX 95224. It shows that it's unplugged.
And what does that mean? What does that reference mean as it relates to Maggie's phone and the Mercedes she was driving?
It means that she unplugged her phone
From that
vehicle.
And the data generally reflects that she's at the residence at that point?
That is correct.
Paul 8:08, Maggie 8:17.
That is correct.
Alex's last data point on his phone was 6:52, right?
That is correct, based on the Verizon records.
We have at 8:17:44 p.m., do we have a battery reference for Paul?
We do. It shows that his iPhone was at 4% battery life at that time.
As we continue forward, do we see Paul continue to use this phone?
We do.
At 8:17 to 8:18, what, if anything, do we see on Maggie's phone?
We're showing approximately 38 steps taken during that time frame.
All right. And that would be after her phone disconnects from the Mercedes?
That's correct.
8:19 p.m., what do we see on Paul's phone?
We see that he connects to a PRTC Wi-Fi and that he receives a Snapchat message from Ansley Wilson stating he got the magic touch. And he also sends another outgoing text message or Snapchat message.
All right. Now, PRTC, his phone connects to PRTC. What is PRTC?
So PRTC is going to be the local internet telephone provider for this area.
Right.
So it's just showing a Wi-Fi connection.
And was PRTC, to your knowledge, providing services to Moselle Road?
They were providing services to the main house and then the cabin.
All right, going below that, we have a series of communications. And whose communications are these going sort of back and forth, a series of communications?
This is going to be Paul Murdaugh's series of communications.
All right. And I'm not going to read each one or have you read each one, but are these generally communications going back and forth with his friends?
That is correct.
And on this page, they start about what time and continue through about what time?
Start around 8:23 and go all the way to 8:29.
Well,
I think we keep on going down. Yeah, about 8:30. about 8:23 to 8:30.
All right, at 8:30 to 8:33 p.m., what, if anything, do we see on Maggie's phone?
We're showing that her phone took approximately 42 steps traveled during that time period.
All right. And that starts at what time that Maggie's phone starts reflecting steps?
8:30 p.m.
About 8:30. Going on to the next page, page 17. Going back just real quick on page 16, generally that series of communications with Paul and his friends, is he generally responding fairly quickly to the communications back and forth?
He is either, it's their Snapchat and iMessages. He's responding and using those two applications very frequently.
Now we're at the top of page 17 at 8:31 p.m. Describe to the jury generally what this data entry is.
So this is going to be a group message from John Marvin Murdaugh. He's talking about how they're planning to go visit their dad tomorrow and asking if anyone else is going. Listed here, everyone that's in that group message.
And that's generally a number of family members?
That is correct.
And the dad they're referring to is who?
It's going to be Alex's dad.
Mr. Randolph?
That is correct.
And based on your knowledge and investigation, he had a turn for the worst health-wise around this time?
That is correct.
All right, well, let's talk about that very quickly. Did the defendant receive, or did his phone receive that text?
His phone and Maggie's phone both received the text message.
And did the defendant ever read that text, according to the phone at least?
According to the phone, it was not read until the following day, 6/8 of 21 at 1:44:49 p.m.
And that text came in at what time?
8:31 on the dot.
And did Maggie read that text right away, at least according to the phone, her phone?
She did not.
All right. And when did her phone finally read that text?
Around 8:49:26.
What time?
8:49:26 is when Maggie read that text.
8:49.
8:49.
At 8:31, what, if any, entry do we see?
So at 8:31:15, Maggie Murdaugh's phone unlocks and does orientation changes. And then at 8:31:18 to 8:49:26, we show that her phone was locked.
At 8:31, there's an orientation change. Does the data reflect that her phone was unlocked at that period of time?
That is correct.
All right. And then what happens after that at 8:31 and 18 seconds?
Her device is locked until 8:49:26.
8:49:26, is that correct?
8:49:26.
All right. At 8:32:25, we have an entry in green and then a line going down. Can you explain to the jury those time periods and what, if any, significance they have?
So green is going to reflect Paul Murdaugh. Anytime you've seen green, it's going to be Paul, and purple is going to be Maggie. That's reflecting that his iPhone moved approximately 283 steps during that time period. So on the left-hand side, as we go down, and you're going to see other data entry points, if you see the green next to it, that means that those steps are being traveled during that time frame.
And now we have a map. Whose phone is that?
This is also going to be Paul Murdaugh's, and this is going to be his iPhone location data.
All right. And where is that iPhone location data located?
That's going to be at the kennel area of the property.
All right. And tell me the time periods that he is at the kennels at this point in time.
At this point in time, he's at the kennels at 8:38:07 p.m., 8:44:53, 8:44:55, and 8:44:56.
What happens at 8:40 while Paul's phone is at the kennels?
Paul calls Rogan Gibson. It shows answered for 4 minutes and 14 seconds.
Starting at what time?
8:40:20.
If you have about a 4-minute call, what time does that end?
8:44.
At 8:44:34, what, if anything, does Paul's phone indicate?
So at 8:44:34, Paul Murdaugh initiates a FaceTime video call with Rogan Gibson. It shows answered 11 seconds long. And that's based off of Paul and Rogan's information.
And then at 8:44:55, what does it reflect on Paul's phone?
This is when this video was extracted and created through Paul's phone, which shows Alex, Maggie, and, well, you can hear Alex, Maggie, and Paul in the background.
That's the kennel video at 8:44.
That's a kennel video that's been in previous testimony, correct?
Following below that, at 8:47 and 8:48, does Paul continue to communicate with his phone?
He does. He uses the iMessage feature in his phone to send a couple messages to Megan Kimbrell. And it looks like it's based off of movie recommendations.
Are those communications for 10 minutes or just for a couple of minutes or a minute or so?
A minute or so.
Going to the top of page 19. What time do we see there?
8:48:29.
All right. And what's going on? What's Paul doing?
He's receiving a message from Megan, and we have some backlight on data at 8:48:56.
All right. And the next entry, tell me the time periods for that entry.
8:48:58 to 8:49:01.
All right. And what happens there?
Paul Murdaugh's phone that's the last time that it was unlocked.
Ever?
Ever. $8:49:01.
And the next activity that we'll see on Paul's phone occurred when?
We have a backlight off from 8:49 to...
Going back to 8:48 to 8:49:01, you said that was when Paul's phone was last unlocked?
That is correct.
And continue on with that data entry, what does it indicate? What's the next time ever that Paul's phone shows any activity?
10:18. That's when...
And the 8:48 to 8:49 p.m.?
Oh, I'm sorry. Next activity notification is going to be the Rogan Gibson call at 9:58:35. That's the next time that any activity or notification shows up on his phone.
Looking at this entry with the green line on the right side, what are those time periods there, and what do they represent starting at 8:49:01?
Starting at 8:49:01 to 10:34:23, Paul's phone shows device locked.
Was it ever open again until it died at 10:34:23?
It was not.
8:49:01 is the last time before that Paul had ever unlocked his phone.
That is correct.
Just a few seconds later, does Maggie's phone reflect any activity?
It does. 8:49:26, so approximately 26 seconds later, her phone unlocks for text message notification, and it implements an orientation change.
And was that text message about Mr. Randolph that you earlier referred to?
That is correct, that group message. I believe it was in response to Lynn.
And at 8:49:31, here in red, what happens to Maggie's phone just seconds later?
Maggie Murdaugh's phone locks forever
Forever. Until when?
until it's recovered the next day at 1:10 p.m.
On June 8th.
on June 8th by law enforcement.
Do both Maggie and Paul's phone lock forever around 8:49?
They do.
At 8:49:35, does Paul's phone receive a text from anyone?
It does. It received a text from Brogan Gibson.
And what does that text say?
See if you can get a good picture of it. Mary Ann, referring to his girlfriend, wants to send it to a girl we know that's a vet. Tell him to sit and stay, and he shouldn't move around too much. That shows unread.
You never read that.
Never read it.
According to the investigation, is that the conversation that Paul and Rogan were actively engaged in starting at 8:40?
That is correct.
The kennel video was at what time?
8:44.
And then the defendant repeatedly denied that he was ever at those kennels with the victims just minutes before their phones go silent forever.
Objection.
Basis for the objection.
Leading. It's leading.
Don't leave it, but just restate the question.
Did the defendant repeatedly deny ever being at the kennels at that
Yes.
time period?
Yes, he did. Various interviews with law enforcement.
And was that kennel video, what time was that kennel video?
8:44.
And what time did Paul and Maggie's phones go silent forever?
8
Answered it several times.
Objection is overruled.
8:49 is when their phones went silent forever.
At 8:53, do we see any activity on Maggie's phone?
We do. At this time, as you can see to the right, her phone is locked, but we do see that 59 steps were traveled over the period of 8:53 to 8:55.
And that just means the phone was moving, correct?
That is correct.
Do we see some orientation changes as well?
We do. Between 8:53:08 and 8:55:32, we see various orientation changes, which would indicate that someone has the phone based on previous testimony.
Moving on to page 20. At the top, we have 8:55, and we have a reference to a data point. Can you explain that to the jury, whose phone that is, and just generally what that is based on information gathered in the investigation?
8:55:48?
8:55:48, yes, sir.
That's just a internal application running in the background for Maggie Murdaugh's phone. It's just the iPhones will take a random snapshot of what's going on in the phone. So that's just reflecting that there was some, behind the scenes stuff happening in her phone. It's not saying that someone was actively using it.
Hold on for me just real quick. Right here at the bottom of page 13, we have a reference to step data on Alex's phone.
That's correct.
And what are those time periods?
8:05:35 to 8:09:52. It's showing 54 steps traveled.
All right. We're turning to page 20. what suddenly happens to Alex's phone around 9:02?
Pretty much wakes up
And what data point is reflected?
from 9:02:18 p.m. to 9:06:47. It shows 283 steps traveled.
And how long? How many minutes, roughly?
5 minutes, 5-6 minutes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 521 in your testimony and see if you recognize that.
I do.
And tell me what that is, please.
This is going to be a PACE spreadsheet for Paul Murdaugh, Maggie Murdaugh, and Alex Murdaugh that I created.
All right. Your Honor, this time I would offer States 521 into evidence.
No objection.
Submit it.
Can I have the element, please? And General, if I could have the screen. All right, tell the jury real quick as we look at this exhibit just admitted, just generally we have at the top, tell them quickly what this is and what these columns represent. Explain this chart if you would.
First column entry, that's just going to be from all the various entries from the phone data. We have a start time, we have a end time, we have the time elapsed in between the estimated amount of steps, and then we have a steps per minute calculation, which is going to be the far right.
And the steps, those are the data entries in this timeline that you've been testifying to as reflected from the phone data.
That is correct.
And then the last column is just a simple calculation of steps based on the time periods of those readings.
That is correct.
And the last step readings that we have on Paul's phone are from what time to what time?
The last step reading from Paul's phone is 8:32 to 8:42.
We have one for Maggie as well, is that correct?
We do. Her last time frame is going to be 8:53 to 8:55.
And then down at the bottom, who do we have?
This is going to be Alex Murdaugh's PACE spreadsheet.
Let's talk about this a little bit. If you would, start with entry 21. And what time periods is that? This is Alex's phone, correct?
This is going to be Alex Murdaugh's phone.
Right, time period?
6:52 to 7:02.
How many steps?
Approximately 283.
And how many steps per minute based on a simple math calculation?
Estimated 29.34.
All right. 22, time period, steps, and steps per minute.
7:03 to 7:11. Approximately 165 steps. Estimated 19.26 steps per minute.
24,
24 is going to be 7:28 to 7:37. Approximately 47 steps. And estimated 5.46 steps per minute.
25,
7:41 to 7:48, showing approximately 29 steps, 3.97 steps per minute.
26,
26 is showing 7:55 to 8:05, 270 steps, approximately 28.2 steps per minute.
28,
28 is going to be the 8:05 to 8:09. It's showing approximately 74 steps. That's 17.28 steps per minute.
and as you testified, that was the last entry on Alex's phone before we get to the 9 o'clock hour. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And what time was the video again?
8:44 p.m.
Let's talk about 27. What's the time period there?
Time period's going to be 9:02 to 9:06.
How many steps?
283 steps, 70.75 steps per minute estimated.
He was a busy guy right then, wasn't he?
It appears.
What was the average steps per minute from 9:02 to 9:06?
70.75.
And was that far in excess of any ratings on his phone in those prior entries?
According to this table, yes.
Could I have the computer back again, please? We have a map here on Paul's phone. Tell us very quickly what that represents.
We do. This is going to be based off of Verizon records for Paul Murdaugh, and it's showing 903.22 and 903.30, just showing what cell towers it was pinging off of.
Again, is his phone still locked during this time?
That is correct. Paul and Maggie's phones are still locked this time.
Bottom of page 20, we got a pink box. What does that reflect?
That's from the FBI telemetry data, just showing a system startup with the telemetry system.
On which
To
vehicle?
be, Alex Murdaugh's 2021 Suburban.
Is there a CDR reference to Mary Ann Dempsey attempting to call Paul?
There is.
Mary Ann Dempsey again is who?
Rogan Gibson's girlfriend at the time.
We have two entries after that. Can you explain those entries to the jury and tell the jury what those are, please?
Yep. So at 9:03:52 to 9:04:23, Maggie Murdaugh's iPhone backlight is on. At 9:04:23, Alex Murdaugh calls Maggie Murdaugh, shows 18 seconds in his CDRs. This does not show on that Dylan Hightower first extraction or the second extraction. And it also shows missed on Maggie's phone extraction.
That one's missing from Alex's phone, correct?
That is correct. In the call log, it is missing.
At 9:05:15, is there any activity on Alex's phone?
It shows that Alex Murdaugh calls Randolph Murdaugh, 18 seconds. Does not show on Dylan Hightower extraction or the second extraction, just on the CDRs.
We have a pinkish box. What does that represent?
Pinkish box is going to represent that system startup for the telemetry data for the 21 Suburban.
At 9:06:12, what happens?
Between 9:06:12 and 9:06:20, Maggie Murdaugh's phone implements orientation change from portrait to orientation sideways.
That starts at 9:06:12.
Yes, and it goes to 9:06:20.
The orientation starts to change. What happens 2 seconds after that orientation starts to change?
At 9:06:14, so that's 2 seconds afterwards, the phone receives an incoming call from Alex.
Was that call on the call log when Dylan Hightower downloaded the defendant's phone?
It was not.
Nine 9:06:14 and 9:06:15. Are those referencing that missed call that showed up on Maggie's phone?
That is correct.
And 9:06:20, we're still seeing an orientation change?
Yep, that's when the orientation ended.
Moving down to the bottom of page 21, we have a bluish and a green box. Tell the jury what that is.
So, according to the FBI telemetry data, the blue is going to indicate a shift in the transmission, and then green is going to show driving.
The Suburban's underway?
That is correct, according to the telemetry data.
At the bottom of page 21, is there another call from Murdaugh's phone to Maggie's phone?
There is. At 9:06:52, Alex calls Maggie. It shows 7 seconds long, and that's based off of CDRs since it was deleted off the call history.
It wasn't on Alex's extraction, correct?
It was not.
2 missed calls?
2 missed calls.
Moving to page 22, at the top, what, if anything, does Alex Murdaugh's phone show in relation to the Suburban?
So it's just showing that the device connected to the car. When you get in your car, your phone will pair. It's just showing a device connection to iPhone.
And then the next entry, there's a time range there. Explain that time range to the jury and what that means.
So starting at 9:07 and going till 9:44,
9 what?
sorry, 9:31:44, her backlight is off
The backlight is off. That entire time period.
that entire time period. It was on, but now for this time period, from 9:07 to 9:31, it's going to show off.
Going to this map, is that some of the cast data that you did, that you testified to the jury?
It is. This is a previous slide that we had up. It's shown at 9:07:06. The Suburban is leaving 4147 Moselle Road.
2 calls to Maggie. Does the Suburban just take a quick right and go down this road right there to the kennels, or does it just continue straight on?
It just continues straight on.
Doesn't stop by the kennels for a second, does it?
It,
Does it stop by the kennels?
his vehicle does not stop by the kennels.
Keeps right on going.
It's right on going to Moselle Road, makes a right.
Going down to the bottom of page 22.
This is just another data point. It's showing the approximate location of Maggie Murdaugh's phone when it was located. And at 9:08:36, it's showing 42 miles an hour on Moselle Road. And in reference, we're coming up to Godley Farm Road on Moselle Road. This is at 9:08:36.
And then we have, below that, we have a reference to a data point that you previously showed to the jury at 9:08:42.
Yep, it's going to be on the next page.
All right.
It's going to be at 9:08:42. It's showing approximate miles per hour of 45 in reference to where the phone was found the next day.
And what's the speed on the defendant's vehicle at that point?
45 miles an hour.
And is Maggie's backlight off during this time period, this entire time period?
Her phone is locked, yes. And the backlight is off.
At 9:08:58, what do we see?
Alex Murdaugh sends a iMessage to Maggie stating, "Going to check on M, be right back." This shows unread in Maggie's phone.
Moving on, does Alex's phone reflect a series of calls being made?
It does.
Tell me about the first one.
First one's going to be at 9:10:47. Alex calls Buster. It shows 60 seconds long. That's based off of CDR since it's not in his phone extractions.
And that's again also missing from that entire series of events around the time of the murders that was not on Alex's extraction when it was downloaded.
That is correct. It's not in the call log.
I'll move on now.
Been asked and answered.
Down at 9:12:14, what if any activity is reflected on the defendant's phone?
Alex Murdaugh calls Chris Wilson. It shows 42 seconds long. That's based off his CDRs because it's not in any of his phone extractions or call log.
Includes connection time as well.
It does.
Moving on to page 24, we have a map. Tell the jury quickly what this map reflects.
It's going to be an Alex Murdaugh location map from Verizon. It's going to show at 9:12:14 what tower and what sector it's pinging off of, and then at 9:18:46 what tower it's pinging off of. The red dot's going to be Moselle. Green one is going to be the Alameda property.
Moving on to the next map, is that similar information of the defendant's trip from Moselle to Alameda?
It's similar. It's just going to show you the coverage areas for each tower.
And then on page 26, what does this map reflect?
This is going to be Verizon records for CB Row. Far right, the little red dot, that's going to be Moselle. Blue dot is going to be CB Row's home in Brunson. This is just showing the cell tower data at the time frame of 9:14, 9:20, and 9:21,
And?
in 11:37 p.m. This is close to Fairfax, just for reference.
He's pinging in the arc near his home over here in Fairfax, is that right?
That is correct. The
And
home's
where's
gonna be the-
Moselle?
Moselle's going to be that red dot to the right.
At 9:18:46, what, if any, activity is reflected on the defendant's phone?
At 9:18:46, Alex Murdaugh calls John Marvin Murdaugh. It shows 106 seconds, and that's from his CDR since it's not on either phone extraction call log.
All right, we're on page 26 now. Tell the jury quickly what this map reflects.
There's also going to be Verizon records from Alex Murdaugh's phone plotted. It's showing starting at 6:20:34 all the way to 9:46:35. It's showing from the cell tower in the sector of Alameda.
You said 6:24 or 9:20?
I'm sorry, 9:20:34.
So roughly 20-minute period at
Rough-
Alameda?
Roughly 20 minutes, correct.
Moving over to page 27, what is this map?
This is just going to be a zoomed-in picture from the previous one, just showing the same time frame, just showing a little bit more zoomed in from the cell tower in proximity to Alameda.
At 9:20:34, what, if anything, happens on the defendant's phone?
At this time, Chris Wilson calls Alex at 9:20:34. It shows for 131 seconds, and we got this data from his CDR since it does not show on either one of his extractions. And during that time, Claude C.B. Rowe at 9:21:36 calls, but Alex does not answer it.
And again, his phone was pinging back at his house in Fairfax at that time period, correct?
That is correct.
We see the blue and green box. Tell the jury what's happening with Alex's Suburban at this point.
So at 21:22, which that's military time, it's going to be 9:22. Green is going to show vehicle movement, and blue is going to show transmission shifting.
And
telemetry
is that
data.
consistent with the OnStar data at 9:22:49 of him arriving in Alameda?
It is.
And on page 28, is that data point that you just referenced?
That is correct, 9:22:39.
Starting about 9:22, does Alex's phone reflect any step activity?
It does 9:22:39 to 9:32:14. We're showing approximately 195 steps taken on his phone.
At 9:24:13, what, if anything, does the defendant phones reflect?
He calls Libby Murdaugh, which would be his mom, shows 20 seconds long. That's from his CDRs because it's not on either phone extraction.
And that would be the landline at Alameda.
That is correct.
After that, is there another missed call from Rogan to Paul?
There is at 9:26:06 p.m.
And then at 9:31:44, is that the first backlight activity on Maggie's phone since that time period you touched about earlier, about 9:07?
That is correct.
At 9:34, around that same time, is there any communication on Maggie's phone around the time of that backlight activity?
There is at 9:34:14. Rogan Gibson sends an iMessage to Maggie Murdaugh saying, tell Paul to call me. And that shows unread.
Never read?
Never read.
Do we also have backlight activity associated with a missed call to Maggie's phone?
We do at 9:34:20.
Up here at 9:34 to 9:36:20, it says Maggie Murdaugh's iPhone backlight. Is that backlight off?
That's going to be backlight off.
Just the off is missing from the words?
That is correct.
9:35 to 9:45, 10-minute period. Is there any activity on Alex's phone?
It's showing approximately 60 steps taken on his phone during that time frame. And also, as you see on the right-hand side, Paul and Maggie's phones are locked. It's referenced with the lines and the color coordination on the right-hand side.
And those lines have been continuing through the past few
They've been
pages.
continuing, correct.
We have some orange and purple boxes. Quickly tell the jury what those are.
So the orange color is going to be that system startup from previous testimony from Falkowski. And then the pink is going to be engine running propulsion.
And is there another missed call from Rogan to Paul?
There is at 9:42:17. There's a missed call. And then we have Alex's Suburban showing a device connection at 9:42:49, which is consistent with the data
All right.
telemetry.
Suburban's leaving Alameda around this time.
That is correct, 9:43:18. We show it starting at 2 miles an hour.
We have some additional telemetry consistent with him leaving.
We do.
Is there any activity on Maggie's phone at this point?
So at 9:44:04 to 9:45:04, it shows that her backlight was off.
And is there a missed call associated with that backlight activity or around the same time?
Yes, Maggie Murdaugh received a call from, it's going to show as PA in the phone extraction, which is it's Alex's number, and it shows missed.
And was that call missing from Alex's phone extraction?
It was missing from both phone extractions.
Going down to 9:46:35, what, if any, activity do you see?
It shows that Alex Murdaugh called Paul Murdaugh, shows 18 seconds long, that's with the connection time, and that is based off of Alex's CDRs. It does not show in either extractions.
9:47:23, what do we see, if anything?
Alex sends a iMessage to Maggie stating, "Call me, babe," and that shows unread in Maggie Murdaugh's extraction.
And do we see some backlight activity around the time of that text
do.
message, that unread text message?
We do, a couple seconds.
Do we have a map here? Just generally, what does this reflect?
We do. This is going to reflect the coverage area of the cell tower between Moselle and Alameda.
And this is whose phone?
This is going to be Alex Murdaugh's phone. This is going to be his Verizon records, not location data from phone.
Moving towards the direction of Moselle?
That is correct.
Additional maps consistent with that as testified to by Matt Wild?
That is correct, just showing coverage area.
At 9:52:15, what if any activity is on Alex's phone?
So at 9:52:15, Alex Murdaugh sends an iMessage to Chris Wilson saying, "Call me if up."
Just around the time where he's running 80 miles an hour?
That's correct. 9:51:43 is when we have the 80.16 mile per hour.
All right, moving over to the next page, is there any further activity?
Alex ends up receiving a call from Chris Wilson at 9:52:59. Shows 42 seconds long with connection. That is also not on either extraction. And at 9:53:55, he receives another call from Chris Wilson. Shows 123 seconds, and that is on his CDRs, but not on either phone extraction.
And then from at about 9:56:57, what if any activity do you see on Alex's phone?
So from 9:56:57 to 10:06:57, it shows that Alex Murdaugh traveled approximately 231 steps traveled during that time.
Starting at what time?
9:56:57 to 10:06:57.
Remind the jury what time the 911 call was.
It was 10:06:14.
At 9:57 and 9:58, what activities reflected on Paul's records?
So Rogan Gibson calls Paul Murdaugh, shows 4 seconds, and that's based off of CDRs. And then at 9:58:35, Rogan sends a text message to Paul stating yo.
And that hits Paul's phone?
That is correct. And
Is it overread?
it shows unread from his phone extraction.
We have a bunch of green and blue boxes. Is this more telemetry data from the Suburban?
This is, the green's going to represent drives, and blue is going to represent some kind of gear shifting with the vehicle.
But the GM OnStar data reflects what, about 10 on the dot?
It reflects him pulling into the driveway at 4147 Moselle Road, the main entrance.
And where did the Suburban go first?
The Suburban went directly to the house, bottom left.
It didn't go to the kennels first, it went to the house first?
That is correct.
And what time does it arrive at the house? Or what time right there in that map? That's what, the map at the top?
That's what the time that it pulls into the driveway.
I'm sorry. 1 second. At 10:03:36 p.m., there's 2 entries around that time. Can you tell the jury what any activity you see as it relates to Maggie's phone?
So Alex Murdaugh calls Maggie Murdaugh's phone at 10:03:58, and backlight is on associated with that.
And then starting about 10:04:08, what don't we see for time period?
So from 10:04:08 to 10:46:40, there is a gap in activity. I don't see any activity on Maggie's phone at all through the Knowledge C database.
At 10:05:06, what, if anything, does the data reflect?
It reflects Alex's Suburban leaving the main house based on the GM data.
Going over to page 35. Is this one of your cast maps?
Yes, it is. It's 10:05:06, and it's showing the time the Suburban starts to leave down to the kennels.
And going to the next map, what time is that?
The next map's going to be 10:05:57. That's the arrival time at the kennels.
According to that GPS location data.
Yes, sir, from GM and OnStar.
What's that time again?
It's going to be 10:05:57.
Down at the bottom of the page, what time is the 911 call?
10:06:14.
How many seconds is that from the time the Suburban arrives at the kennels and he calls 911?
Roughly 20 seconds.
20 seconds.
That's correct.
Do you recall the defendant's statements to law enforcement shortly after the crime? That he went over and checked the bodies and that sort of thing?
I do.
Lead the witness.
What, if anything, in his statements to law enforcement did the defendant say about what he did when he arrived at the scene?
The defendant stated that he went and checked on Paul and Maggie to check the bodies.
And from the moment the Suburban arrived at the kennels, how long did it take for that 911 call to be made?
Less than 20 seconds.
Another call from Rogan to Paul that never be answered?
That is correct. 10:08:27, never answered.
At 10:11:54, what happens?
This is when Alex Murdaugh was on the 911 call, stated he was going to go get a gun. This was at 10:11:54. This is when the Suburban is showing leaving the kennels.
And down at the bottom of page 36, we see another map. What does that reflect?
That's going to be 10:13:54. And on the next page, it's going to show the map. That's when his Suburban left the main house going back to the kennels.
And what time does the location data reflect that the Suburban arrived back at the kennels?
10:14:30 is when it's going to reflect driving back to the kennels. Or approximately. This is when he's coming into the view of the kennels.
And then what time does the 911 call end?
So the 911 call is going to end at 10:17. And then the step data is what the 10:16:37 p.m. is referring to. That's going to be when his step data ended. I believe it was 594 steps taken.
After the 911 call, does the defendant's phone reflect any activity?
It does. It shows him calling Randy Murdaugh. It shows 16 seconds long with the connectivity time. And that's based off his CDRs. It was not found on either extraction. And then also we have a 10:18 where he's sending a text message to Randy saying, please call me emergency.
Is there step activity around this time on Alex's phone?
There is 10:18:53 to 10:28:05. We're showing approximately 525 steps taken during that time frame.
And does Paul's backlight come on again at 10:18?
It does 10:18:08 to 10:18:20. We're showing backlight.
Was that after the 911 call had ended?
No. I'm sorry, yes. Yes, it was.
Yes, it was.
Yes, it was. So 10:17 is when the 911 call ended, and this would have been at 10:18:08. So this would have been right after.
And the last text that hit Paul's phone was from whom?
Rogan Gibson. I believe it said yo.
Paul's phone still hitting, of course, at the kennel location.
That is correct. This is going to be off of his iPhone location data.
And where was Paul's phone found again, according to your knowledge of the investigation?
It was found on Paul's rear end, facing up.
Top of page 39, we have a map. What does that reflect?
This is going to reflect Verizon records for Alex Murdaugh, starting at 10:19 all the way to 11:18, and it's just showing the sector it was pinging off of, and that's in the area of Moselle Road.
All right, and we have a range of times there from the 10-ish hour to the 11-ish hour p.m. with Alex's phone being there.
That is correct.
Does Alex's phone reflect a couple of calls that were not on his extraction but in the CDRs?
It does.
To what people?
It's going to be to Randy Murdaugh, John Marvin, and then Rogan Gibson, and then Christie.
At 10:20:08, what, if any, activity does Paul's phone reflect?
So Paul's phone shows a display on screen auto lock. It's been locked. It's just documenting a auto lock.
Display on auto lock?
Mm-hmm.
And auto lock can be consistent with what, according to your understanding?
According to my understanding is that auto lock could be, it doesn't recognize like a face, so it automatically locks, or it could be just hitting like on the iPhone, the power button on the side.
And what was the last text that hit Paul's phone again? Who was it from?
Rogan Gibson.
And what does the defendant do just seconds later?
Calls Rogan Gibson.
Was that on the Dillon Hightower extraction?
It was not on the Dillon Hightower extraction or the second one.
You mentioned before that there was a group text about Mr. Randolph's health. And when did the defendant finally read that text?
The following day, so that'd be June 8th, 2021.
At 10:22:09, was there a text that the defendant read?
There was 10:22:09. He received a group text message from Michael Gunn and a few people saying she brought the heat from Miami boys, and it was read the same night at 10:38:42 p.m. An associated picture is below.
The 10:24 and the 10:25 hours, what, if anything, does the defendant's phone reflect?
Alex tries to call Rogan, and then he sends an iMessage stating, "Call me." and then he attempts to do a FaceTime, and this is going to be the first log that we see on his phone records is going to be this FaceTime call with Rogan on his extraction for the day of June 7th, 2021.
Multiple attempts to contact Rogan, huh?
That's correct.
And what time does law enforcement arrive on the scene?
Approximately 10:25 is when the first deputy arrived on scene.
10:25?
That's correct.
We see step activity around this time on Alex's phone?
We do. So we had a group of step activity end at 10:28:54, and then we had a new group start at 10:28:54 that goes to 10:37:27. It's showing 320 steps traveled approximately.
And does the defendant's phone reflect any phone activity after that?
It reflects at 10:29:17 a call to Randy that shows answered 42 seconds long. That's also not on the extraction. And then a FaceTime with Rogan at 10:30:31 that does show on the extraction.
That was attempted FaceTime?
That's correct. I believe his previous testimony, Rogan said he was asleep during the time.
Moving on to page 41.
This is going to be a Paul Murdaugh Verizon records. This is just going to show the the tower and then just the location, and you can see Moselle Road within it. This is a 10:34 time period.
Is there a display on activity on Paul's phone, but also a phone call from Nolan Tootin around that time?
That is correct. Around 10:34, it's showing display on and then a Nolan Tootin phone call.
And then finally, what time does Paul's phone finally die?
Paul's phone finally dies at 10:34:24 p.m. on June 7th, 2021.
Almost 2 hours after the kennel video?
That is correct.
Maggie's phone stays locked until when?
The following day, June 8th, around 1:10 p.m. when the investigators find it.